Thank you all for coming to this town hall meeting. What I wanted to do at the first town hall, and I'm hoping to have multiple of them, is to discuss the strategic plan. And before I even get started, I want to make sure that this is clear, that it's clear that this is a draft of a strategic plan. The whole purpose of doing this town hall is to get feedback from the faculty, because my philosophy in terms of how I will plan to lead the ALRI is really, it has to, everything that we do must be faculty driven, right? So I'm not going to be the person doing all of the research, and so it's got to be led by faculty, and we have to have faculty buy-in. So this is the time for faculty to give input and to help direct help determine the direction of the institute. I also want to be clear that this is a 5-year plan. So we're not sort of stuck on anything that we agreed to today. Plus, I mean, it's flexible. So if something's not working, then I'm always willing to sort of change and depending on what's working and what's not working, okay? So I want that to be clear so you don't think that you don't have a say-so, because this is why we're having this town hall, okay? Just to give a little bit of the process of how this plan came together, I want to start with just the mission. And this is the mission statement of the Institute that was formulated before I arrived, but this is the goals, the mission of the ALRI is to serve as a focal point for interdisciplinary biopsychosocial research. Okay, so really the focal point here is interdisciplinary research. And so what I want to do is bring faculty from across campus together to tackle big problems. Right? So, and we're investigating the human condition at all levels, from the molecular to the environmental, with the goal of improving the lives of people in Alabama and beyond. And so that Alabama part is important to me. I mean, we're living in Alabama. The institution is in Alabama. We're a state institution. We need to give back to the people of the state of Alabama. So that part is important. But it's also important to note that it's from the molecular to the environmental. So it's everyone, in my sort of mind, it's everyone on campus can potentially be affiliated with the institute, and their work can fit within the institute. So that's also important. So no, we're not trying to leave anyone out. The way this strategic plan came together is with the help of the advisory board and our faculty fellows. And I was supposed to look this up to make sure I didn't leave a group off, but we divided ourselves into some committees. And for anyone who was a part of this process, and I've left your sort of subcommittee, y'all, please speak up. So we had a community engagement committee, the center director, so the centers and were also engaged. And we also had a group that's focused on institutional support. And I've spent the last year, so I've been on campus since October 1. And I've spent the last year just trying to understand what faculty do on campus, where the expertise is sitting on campus, where there's a sort of a nice sort of group of faculty from across campus working on similar problems, right? And how we can potentially pull together some interdisciplinary research teams. So that's what I've been doing. And those two things have come together to create this plan. I should also say that I'm completely okay with you guys sort of jumping in and asking questions along the way. So we don't have to wait until the end. And a lot of that is just because sometimes when I'm just hearing my own voice, I get bored and will go fast. So sometimes questions can help sort of break up me hearing my own voice. So please jump in and ask questions whenever you have them. The overarching plan and the goals of the strategic plan are sort of listed here. And so one is to support interdisciplinary collaborations that tackle big systemic research problems. and themes that UA is uniquely positioned to pursue and that are impactful. So this is like, you know, that big kind of pie in the sky. This is what our sort of goals are. We also understand that there are some things that we need, some resources we need to put in place. And so we're wanting to create research cores that support large scale projects. So some of those cores, a couple of those cores include like big data AI. So it seems clear that particularly NIH is moving towards like big science and big sort of collaborative projects, sort of multi-site projects, and being able to manage and process big data is important, and incorporating artificial intelligence and machine learning is important. So making sure that we're able to do that, right? So if we want to play in that space, we need to have the resources to be able to manage the data and process the data and manage those types of big projects. The other is creating a statistics and biostats core. Currently, we have one statistician, and he is being pulled in lots of different directions. And so it seems clear that there is a need for that. We do have, as one of our affiliated centers, the data analytics group and business. And so I think we can work with them as well as our statistician, and potentially hiring maybe some master's level statisticians to support the need across campus, because again, because our statistician is being pulled in lots of different directions, it seems clear that there's a need for a stats core here. And there may be others, but those are the two that sort of jumps out at me and has jumped out at me. And this again is where you guys can jump in and let me know like what else may be needed from your perspective. The other is to engage our greater local and Alabama communities in mutually beneficial ways, both around research and outreach. And so earlier this week, we had a panel discussion with some local community groups just to talk about and start thinking about the kinds of things that they would like for us to do and how to be good partners with them. And it's really important for me that if we're going to have an impact on the community, and many of us rely on the community to collect data, that we need to we need to have great relationships with them. And so that is important to make sure that we do. I think it's also important that we create some training programs and initiatives that develop necessary skills of our students and researchers to produce world-class research related to our mission. So that's something else, partnering with academic programs to think about how we can create training programs is something that we also want to do. And then we want to collaborate with ORED to develop strategic communication and marketing plans to promote the work, basically to promote your work, to promote the work of the affiliated centers and ALRI, but really that means promoting the work of our faculty. So in case some of you sort of don't know my personal background, I got my PhD at the University of Alabama, Birmingham. And we submitted, I've sort of worked with some people and submitted a couple of grants since being here. And seeing University of Alabama, the flagship campus, Tuscaloosa, being confused with UAB has just been annoying to me. And so I think we do need to do a lot more to promote the research that's happening on this campus so that we're known for our research as much as we're known for football. So that is important, I think, for a research institute to make sure that your research is known worldwide. And so we need to do some work in that space. So we've developed some research themes. One of those themes is rural health and health disparities. So I think given where we are, sitting in basically surrounded by rural Alabama, that a focus on rural health is important for us. And I think it's a way for us to, one, distinguish ourselves some from UAB, and for us to think about how we can, when people think of rural health, they think of University of Alabama, Tuscaloosa campus, right? So that's what we want to do. So we want to conduct research that uncovers the mechanisms responsible for disparities in health outcomes, both rural disparities and racial ethnic disparities are, are things that we can, and gender, so any disparity, gender disparities. Develop and implement interventions to improve the health of all Alabamians. We know that Alabama sits at the bottom of the list for lots of health outcomes, from cancer to stroke to dementia. I mean, so we're sitting at the bottom on a lot of different scales. And so I think there's definitely a lot of work to do in understanding why and how to change it, right? And provide support to existing groups and expand ongoing efforts across all colleges on campus. And so we do have an Institute for Rural Health in CCHS that's directed by John Higginbotham. So we don't want to recreate a wheel, right? So our goal isn't to sort of take over what anyone else is doing, but to provide as much support as we can so that they can grow what they're doing, not to take over. So again, this was sort of identified as an area of strength on campus, and we want to make that strength on campus sort of stronger and grow it. So our goals, and this is not an exhaustive list. Again, this is where you guys come in, because again, I can't do any of this work. This is all work that the faculty will be doing. So we do want to pursue some transformative and sustainable initiatives around particular areas of health. And so, and just to give you some examples, so I've been working with a group around cancer research, around maternal morbidity and mortality, which is a huge issue in the country, but particularly in the state, and the racial disparities associated with those. So those are a couple of examples, but there are lots of other people on campus working, focused on other areas. And so it really is going to depend on how many faculty are interested, and how interdisciplinary, how sort of different the members of the people on campus are who are engaged in research in that area, and how we can bring them together to really tackle some big problems. We wanted to develop a community engagement plan to support statewide interest in rural health and health disparities. So working with the Department of Public Health, working with community health providers. We want to make sure we're engaged with those people who are out in the community, on the ground, who understand what's going on, and we have mutually beneficial collaborations with them. And I think something else we want to do is think about how we can work in the space of telehealth in rural Alabama, right? So we know that these hospitals in rural Alabama are closing. There's a problem with access to care. And the question becomes, how can we use telehealth to provide healthcare to people who don't have a hospital close by or don't have a physician close by? And so I think it's important to think about how we can potentially expand telehealth in rural Alabama. Now that will also require sort of discussions around broadband access. And so working with, so it's a big complex problem that's not just about health, but it's also about technology. It's also about how people use the technology and making sure they can use the technology. So you can see how these things are, again, interdisciplinary and big problems. Are there any comments about this theme? Just
Sharlene,
ask questions.
I had a question that's overarching, actually. I've plopped it in the chat. So, so I am really excited about this particular theme, and you know, happy about the focus on community engagement and biostats, real needs on this campus, particularly biostats. I was wondering if across the themes, ALRI would have an opportunity to help support post-award management on campus. I find that to be a need. we have a need pre-award, but we also have a need post-award. And I didn't know if that was a role that ALRI could help play.
Yeah, so in some of the conversations I've had with like some of the center affiliated center directors, we did have some discussion around having some shared personnel, right? So it could be that, you know, one center needs someone, but not full time, to work on some post-award things, and another center also, and how we could sort of have some centralized personnel that maybe some different groups can contribute to funding so that multiple people have access. So we've had those discussions, but we haven't sort of nailed down exactly what we want to do and how we want to do them. So I think we need to move those kinds of discussions forward about how we can create something that multiple people can contribute to, and then lots of people can benefit from, right? So, because you don't want to hire a full-time person and you only need them 25% of the time. So thinking about how we could be efficient with using the limited resources that we all have. So yeah, that's been thought about. So I guess that's the short answer is yes, we've thought about it. Any other questions or comments?
There are a couple questions in the chat, Charlene.
Oh, well, I can't see the chat. So,
Casey, do you want to unmute and talk through it? Your question, I think, is something I was thinking as well, but I don't want to steal your thunder. So Casey asks, building on that, my perspective is UA needs improvement throughout the entire process. IRB, pre-award, post-award can already help to advocate for change there or build in-house pre-award and post-award support. And so I was particularly drawn to that IRB question, which I've jotted down to ask you later, but I'm curious if you could address that in this moment.
So yeah, so that's one of the areas that I've heard lots of complaints about. And I have had a couple of conversations about IRB. What I will say is that, I mean, that office, I mean, they're working hard. So it's not like they're sitting around not sort of processing people's applications. They are sort of working hard to try to get things done. And so, you know, one of the things that I sort of talked about a little with the office is maybe having some workshops and tutorials for faculty and graduate students about how to put those applications together to make it easier for them to get approved. And so sometimes it's like, if you know the wording you should use, because the thing that you have to remember with IRB is that they're a regulatory body, which means everything's like legalese, and you have to say it the right way to get approved. And sometimes, you know, as a faculty, you don't know what they're like. I said that. What do you want? So knowing exactly how they want things phrased, exactly how they need things done, can make things go a little easier. But I think there are probably potentially some ways to make their work more efficient. And so, I mean, I have had some conversations just because since I got here, I've been sort of hit with the IRB is slow, the IRB is slow, the IRB is slow. But definitely I'm happy to advocate for that. And so knowing what your problems are would be helpful in that.
I think if you had an IRB specialist in-house at ALRI,
yeah, I've asked for one.
Well thought out, yeah.
Yeah, I've asked for one, and it may, yeah. So I'm hoping that we get someone over here soon. And I think we were really sort of having some conversations about it, and then COVID hit, and then everything sort of like the ball got dropped on lots of things. So it's definitely something that I've thought about. In terms of post-award, I think so. The question was about the whole process. People need some support and help with. So I think I've talked a little about post-award. So what other kinds of issues? Because I think some departments, at least all the colleges, have some pre-award people to support faculty.
Charlene, this is Ansley in psychology. I really feel like we need a system like Caillou's, or there are a lot of systems that can be purchased that track an award or a project all the way from start to finish, show you the flow chart, who the person is, allow that is responsible for each step, allow that person to enter in notes so that we know if we're waiting on a lawyer, we know if we're waiting on an IRB. So that way this doesn't get lost. And I spend quite a lot of time, and I'm sure a lot of people do, sending emails to half a dozen people trying to figure out where in the system it's stuck. And it seems like I know from what my husband does, there are a bazillion packages that can be purchased that would track an award all the way from notice of award all the way to the account being set up and able to be charged. And I think that there is a lack of communication between these groups on campus, very likely because of understaffing, and we need to have their ability to communicate more effectively be automated.
Yeah.
And that seems like a pretty straightforward solution.
So, and I will definitely sort of bring this up and see how we can move forward with
I'll send you a list of some systems that can be purchased.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Yep.
Charlene, this is Joanne Oliver. So in the past, I know, one of the things that we've talked about over and over, that the infrastructure for research is certainly missing in some areas. We do have strengths in certain colleges, but it's piecemeal because we may have a strength in one area but lacking in another. At one time we did a survey, and I thought it was a university-wide survey, and someone can correct me on this if not. Basically when Dr. Bell came and basically outlined some things that we thought we needed. And a lot of these things that are still coming up here is certainly some of the things that we talked about in that survey, as I recall. So again, it sounds like we have a number of infrastructure issues, and how can we as a team, and I know that's part of what we're doing today, but how can we put this in writing so that we can be really clear on what needs to be the next steps of getting these things that, we have major weaknesses in?
Yeah, so, I mean, I think we can, for me, I think it would be, it's just good to hear what you guys are thinking and what you guys are running across, because I'm still new to campus and haven't gone through the process, so I don't really know where the roadblocks are from personal experience. So one, I think you guys telling me now, and Ainsley sort of sending me some information, but it's also, I think, important for me to know like what is in each of the colleges and what's not in those colleges, and where you're getting your support from. That way, it's an easier conversation with ORED around what you guys are needing, right? So the one thing that I've heard consistently is IRB. Right? I mean, that's the thing that every time I talk to faculty, they complain about IRB. But other things I haven't really heard so much about, other than the center directors and the post-award issue. But if there are other things other than IRB and post-award, then I think it's important for you guys to just kind of let me know. And Ainsley talking about the problem with the whole flow and not being able to know where your award is, I think is important. John?
Yes, hi, chemical and biological engineering. I think even related to that, having pre-award support would be great. There are a lot of boilerplate material that can be inserted to many of these grant applications, but also more enriched data that we can supply, so talking about our university facilities and talking about the demographic of our students and our faculty. Often I have to search for this on our website or ask around to find some of that information, which should be very readily available for many of our applications to talk about how how well equipped and or how strong an environment that we have. So those type of sections could be taken care of ahead of time through support. And we just the PIs that focus primarily on the research idea and getting that proposal written.
Okay.
So I think all of these things are coming down again and again to monetary support for support staff and technology packages that will enhance the process and let PIs do the science as opposed to chasing down information or trying to track where in the blip something is that's blocking either applying for money or getting the money that you've already been awarded to the places it's supposed to go.
The other thing I would kind of add in there is I think some of the larger universities do have people who are kind of dedicated to support PIs in terms of developing larger proposals. And I'm not just thinking in terms of things like proofreading, but in terms of larger programmatic aspects. So, this summer I got through writing a career grant, and the university offers wonderful support in doing that. And we're able to get feedback back, for example, from a company, which points out some of these like major things that sometimes a PI with a good idea can overlook in writing the proposals. And as an engineer who's trying to kind of branch out into the bio aspect of things, I think from my perspective, this is an area where if I were to try to prepare an NIH grant or anything in NSF even, which was related to a bio program area where I just don't have that kind of domain information, and being able to work with someone who would be able to give back feedback obviously wouldn't guarantee the outcome of a proposal, but it would prevent proposals from being turned down on things that are really preventable, I guess is what I would say. And I don't know if we have support for this, and I'm not aware of it because I'm kind of new to the game, but I just thought I'd ask.
Not that type of support for like an R01. No, I think that's where it's important to create these interdisciplinary communities, right? So you're working with someone with bio background who can go, oh, no, this thing is missing.
Right.
I think we do have support, like if you're putting together a center grant,
Yes.
so you get support to help you sort of organize yourselves and
Yes.
create deadlines and those kinds of things.
Yes.
But in terms of what you're talking about, we don't. But that's where I think having a rich sort of group of faculty interested in the same topic, but from different backgrounds and being able to collaborate.
Well, I mean, we're going to try to submit something with Dario Martelli, but he's also an engineer.
Yes,
so.
That's what I was going to say. I was like, he's an engineer too.
So we'll see.
Yeah.
But
so we can talk offline and I can sort of help you think
Sure.
about who you should add.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Any kind of guidance is helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. So that I think is the important part, is making sure you have the right team.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Anything else before we move to the neuroscience theme?
I have one comment, Charlene, at least a thought that I actually have a second one if there's time. But you talked about kind of working out in the open and, getting what we're doing out there a little bit more. And pardon me, I know that I support that. I think that's excellent. And that's because one of those things that you had talked about was the potential loss of a grant based on recognition. And we all feel that pain when things like that happen. And I think it's important for us to have that visibility, not just in the academic community, but in our own university community as well. And one of the thoughts that came to my mind is, are there entities on campus that we aren't currently interacting with that ALRI could? For example, like the Faculty Senate giving an annual report or something like that, because research is a big part of what they do, and there's commonly a report there, and even if that's given by ORED, I mean, can there be a report from ALRI given that says, hey, here's what we've been working on, and here's how our plan is coming along, things like that, to just kind of generate awareness at that level and help kind of move these pieces into place? Because I agree that we need help with these different processes. I've not had many of the complaints with IRB that others have had, fortunately, knock on wood. But sometimes it helps to kind of just bring some light to, hey, here's what we're doing. It gives us the opportunity to say, you know, we're doing some really good work. And then those conversations kind of off to the side happen, say, hey, well, I wonder if you could help me streamline this process a little bit, or help me pick up a software tool that we really could use to help us do more efficient, more effective work.
Yeah. Actually, so I'm meeting with the faculty Senate, their research committee next month. And you know, at my previous institution at IU, I was on the faculty Senate and on their research committee. So yeah, so we'll definitely use that. And the other thing I will say is you should all follow ALRI on Twitter. We do have a Twitter account. We are pushing out stories about faculty. we're trying to get something out. So follow us on Twitter. We should be easy enough to find. So that's, I guess, one answer to that as well. Okay, so moving to the neuroscience theme. So the mission there is to do neuroscience. The primary focus is really is human neuroscience. But that's not to say, well, I'll get to it. So the goals are to create a MRI research center. We are sort of moving in that direction there. We've actually made quite a bit of progress so far. So Rajesh Khanna in psychology, and I got an NSF MRI to get a MRI scanner. And so we're in the process of creating the center. We do expect the center to be interdisciplinary and involve faculty from across campus. I'm also particularly interested in ensuring that our engineers are engaged especially on the methods side of things and on computational neuroscience side of things. And so people who are involved in machine learning, I think it would be great. And people interested in network science and applying that to brain networks, I think that would be great, as well as our faculty in psychology and other places who are interested in things like neurodevelopment and typical and atypical function, and our friends in educational neuroscience who are focused on like the neuroscience of learning. So I think we need both the technical side and sort of the psychological cognitive side of things sort of working together to make sure that we're on the leading edge of MRI research and not following neuroscience research. We also want to grow the neuroscience footprint on campus. So there is a major in the College of Education in educational neuroscience. I think we want to grow that in arts and sciences, combining. There's a minor in psychology that's a collaboration with biological sciences. I think we want to think about how we can grow that there so that we are engaging more undergraduates and graduate students in neuroscience research. So again, this is one of these collaborations with an academic unit to see how we can improve training. And we want to increase translational research on campus. And so I say that, you know, the primary focus is human neuroscience because we're creating this MRI research center, and the MRI is a human system, not a small bore high field magnet for animals. So, I mean, so we're going to focus on human, but I think having translational science on campus is important for me, right? So, and I think it's important for a lot of other people on campus, where we can have people working in preclinical models as well as clinical problems, and those people being able to talk to each other and inform the research of each other and sort of sharing ideas. So for example, someone who may be working and a rodent model of autism, can work with people in the autism center and collaborate with each other in some really cool ways. And so we want to grow that preclinical work as well, and with people working in mammalian models. So primarily rodents. Okay. The next is the biomedical sciences theme. And so one of the things that I have found on campus is that there are quite a few people from across campus in both chemical and biological engineering, in chemistry and biological sciences, as well as in nutrition sciences, actually, who have an interest in developing therapeutics and also in drug delivery systems. So we want to sort of bring those people together, and we want to think about how we can potentially create a biomedical sciences center around the work that they're doing, and helping them sort of maybe talk to each other a little more and collaborate a little more. So we want to create a biomedical sciences center. We do have some space in the second floor of the AIM building where some of that work can happen. And so we want to explore how we can sort of grow in that area. And we also want to increase UA's ability to perform small scale clinical trials, right? So, I mean, I think right now they can do, CCHS, they do some small clinical trials, but I think we want to increase that. If we're going to increase our drug delivery and so drug discovery kind of area, we also want to be able to do some clinical trials. And we want to partner with the Office of Economic and Business Engagement to develop collaborations with pharmaceutical and biotech and medical device companies. I think there's an interest in doing that. And I mean, I have had conversations with one small pharmaceutical company who wanted to partner with us to do a clinical trial, but we didn't have the capacity to do it. And so I think there's a reason why we want to sort of expand our ability to do some of that. We're not going to want to do anything at the scale that a UAB can do, but there's some benefits to us being able to do some of that here. The population that we can reach is slightly different than the population that UAB has access to in Birmingham. And so I think there's reasons why we would want to do that. Any questions about these previous two?
Hey, Charlene, on the biomedical sciences theme, I just wanted to ask one question. So when you mentioned the space in the AIM building, is that office space or lab space?
Both.
Okay, so you do have a vision for there being, some kind of lab space associated with.
Yeah, so there's already wet lab space on the second floor. So yeah, and there's office space to support what's going on in that lab. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess related to Jack's comments and questions, I think it'd be great if there are some core facilities that many parties would be interested in utilizing. Cell sorters, confocal, other material testing, perhaps soft materials for tissue-related characteristics. I guess the list can go on, but ALRI could be a center in which everyone congregates around those common facilities.
Yeah, and so I've spent some time sort of thinking about that as well. But I think one of the things that we need to also think about is how do we get like these large, expensive pieces of equipment, right? So what's the best plan to do that? And I think there's where we need to sort of be more strategic than maybe we have been. And think, because we don't have like Arkansas just got, I don't know, $160 million from the Walton family. We don't have a Walton family at the moment. So we need to be a little more strategic. And so that's where, I think if there's equipment that a large enough group of faculty need, and sort of, then I think bringing those faculty together and thinking about putting together some kind of proposal negotiating with ORED, but also writing some equipment grants and seeing how we can find a way to get that equipment is probably a better strategy than saying, hey, can we get this list of equipment? Especially now, and I think the other thing is that we have to be somewhat aware of the fact that COVID has hit the pocketbooks of the campus. And so it's just going to be a little more difficult than we need to, I think, bring those people together, think strategically about what's needed and what equipment will sort of move your research, advance your research, and then try to strategize on how to get that equipment. And in a similar way to how the MRI scanner is coming, right? So a group of faculty got together, put a proposal together and say, we need this, this is why we need it, this is what we're gonna do with it, this is how we're gonna make this sustainable over, within 5 years, and wrote a grant to cover a bunch of the costs. And so I think we need to think about how we can do more of that on campus. And I'm happy to help facilitate those kinds of conversations and strategizing. And I think that's probably a better way, other than sort of bringing in some hotshot with a lot of money who can bring the equipment.
Right. So I think earlier we talked about staff support for pre-award and post-award, but even with these equipments and core facilities, I think we're understaffed with technical staff who can fund instruments, manage the instruments. That's a general lack, I feel, at least from my corner of the campus.
No, I completely agree. But I think having this new like research faculty or research scientist position on campus will potentially help to fill some of those gaps, because it's hard to get a PhD level person to come in without some kind of structure like that. And so now that we have it, I think it may be a little easier to bring those people in than it was in the past. So I think, again, the faculty just have to get together and be strategic about how you can sort of build the infrastructure that you need on campus. And again, I'm really sort of here to help do that. But I don't know what you need, and so you need to sort of come to me with that. The MRI was easier for me because I use MRI and I wanted one, and so it sort of being strategic about that was easy because I knew what was required and what was needed. But your work, I have no idea. So.
Well, I'll just add one brief thing onto what John Kim was saying. So, I think there are a lot of ways that the university, many different departments could benefit by having a core molecular biology lab attached to the biomedical sciences center. But as John was saying, the key thing is, you don't need a room full of instruments, but you need someone who's dedicated, a staff person, to maintaining them and training new users and making sure people understand how to use the instruments correctly.
Right. Right. No, I can. It's the same with the MRI in that case. Yeah. So having a scanner sitting there, but you also have to figure out how you're going to cover the cost of the staff, not just the instrument. But yeah, no, that part is the same. Anything else before we move to the next one? Okay. So the next is the environmental sciences and health. And I put it in this order for a reason, because usually it's like environmental health and sciences is what I've seen. And so the mission here is to understand the cumulative exposures and interactions of environmental factors that affect health and disease across the lifespan. Right? So, and the reason I put sciences before health is that in taking a look at the faculty across campus, there are quite a few faculty on campus who focus on environmental science. Right, so from ecology and biology and all the people who study water and on campus, but also some other people, and I always get, and I said I was going to get this straight, geology and geography. So there are people who study forestry, and so there are lots of people on campus who focus on environmental science. There are fewer people who identify themselves as environmental health experts. Although there are people, I think, who care about this, but don't identify as this. And so I think one of the things we need to do is sort of grow that part of this equation. But I think it's important, especially given that we have the National Water Survey on campus and collaborating with the Water Institute on campus to focus on not just water quality, but the impact of that on health. So, and something just came up like within the past couple of weeks where lead was found in the water in a town in Alabama, right? So I think it's important to think about the impact of this on human health. And so this is where this theme is coming from. And so again, we do need to think about how we can, I think it's more, again, I really think that we do have faculty interested in the impact of the environment on health. They just don't identify themselves as environmental health people. And so part of it is sort of getting them to see themselves in this light to bring them into the conversations here. Okay, so the last theme that I want to discuss, and this is where, I mean, I really want to have a conversation with many of you about, is a potential theme 5, which I've been struggling somewhat with, but I think it's important to do, and that is in the area of implementation science. Right, so the goal of implementation science is to identify factors that affect the uptake of interventions into routine use, but also to develop and apply strategies to overcome the barriers, right? So there are a lot of faculty on campus who do implementation science in psychology, in education, people in CCHS and social work, and computer science as well. So there are people who are looking at the sort of use of new technology and how you can sort of overcome some barriers for different populations. As well as in nursing and probably other places across campus that are very involved in implementation science. So I do want to make sure that we have we've incorporated that large group of faculty and they see themselves, because again, there is I mean, in some ways, UA is known for implementation science, maybe more than some other areas that I've outlined. And so, and they are very active researchers on campus. But I'm concerned with having too many themes, but also implementation science is, I don't want to sort of sort of cloud the conversation. I want you guys to tell me how to do this, the best ways to sort of incorporate this theme.
I need to learn more about how we will differentiate and use this brain trust, how we will differentiate our implementation science theme from, say, UAB's Translational Science Center. Back in the day, UA and UAB both applied when those centers were first funded federally. And of course, ours got eaten. So I need others to help you think this through.
Okay, surely someone has some feelings or thoughts about how to do this.
I think implementation science is a really good idea. I'm not sure how to bring that particular group together. It seems to me that having, some common projects.
I mean, they're already together. I mean, I guess that's the issue. I mean, so
I didn't understand that from what you had said.
I mean,
yeah,
that's easy enough for me to do. And that's the easiest thing to do, is create a 5th theme around implementation science. And I'm happy to do that. But I just wanted some input from everyone else about the idea of having 5 themes and whether that's too ambitious for a 5-year plan. In some ways, the implementation science theme will run itself because they're already a very active group of people. They're already sort of writing proposals and getting proposals funded. They're already doing a lot of work. Now, how much they're all sort of working together, I mean, that we can work on, and sort of bringing them under one umbrella and kind of having them talk with each other, maybe a little more than they are. So yeah, so it's a lot, it's around sort of that. And also because, I mean, in some ways, implementation science is involved in the rural health theme quite a bit, but I think we should have a rural health theme because I think that's kind of, in some ways, that's how we're gonna sort of identify ourselves as rural, rural science, rural. So we need to have a rural health theme, I think.
Well, I wonder if it should be so much its own theme, you know, as one of the columns that holds up the ALRI, so much as it should be a common theme among the other four, right? And I know I'm using that same word two different ways, but I wonder if implementation science doesn't have enough application to, it certainly does with rural health and several of the others, that it might be something where that's a piece of what we're trying to do in the other four, rather than having it be its own standalone theme. And then when we're working, for example, with rural health, then we can go and talk to one of our experts in implementation science to help us figure out this, that, or the other.
So someone who does implementation science, help me out here. Does it, because I mean, I don't, does it make sense for it to be like a research core that sort of permeates all the others, or its own thing?
So this is Ansley. I can see it either way. Maybe I'm misunderstanding the point of the theme, so fair enough, right, if I am. But I think to some degree, whether or not it's its own theme or a point of the themes would be reliant on how these themes are going to facilitate organization. And then also from another perspective, if we think about Alabama loves to come in 49th or 50th all the time, right? And so this is one of our strengths, as I know that sounds ridiculous, but it's true, from the University of Alabama as the flagship university, is to say, look, we are coming in with the ability to implement change, and we are in the best place to do that, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think there's a lot of interest in funding work from Alabama because we have a lot of room for improvement. And so that is a strength of where we are, and we shouldn't deny that. And we should take advantage of having a lot of implementation science researchers, mm-hmm. as well as being in a perfect place in the United States to do this work. So I don't know if it should be highlighted as a separate thing because of its importance for our community and for funding agencies, or if it should be on its own because of organization, or not on its own because of organization. So that doesn't answer your question, but it provides provides thoughts about how it might be considered.
Yeah, and I think that's where I am, because I think it is something that we are, I don't want to say uniquely able to do, but very, I mean, I think it's part of who we are. And it's good for advertising in a way, the same way rural health is good for advertising. And so that's why I kind of want to make it its own thing, but I can also see it as a research core that everything implements or sort of uses. And so that's where I'm.
Yeah. Charlene, I agree. You know, I certainly could see it both ways. I like the idea of having it separate, to be honest with you, because I think, you know, with me, I think of the overlapping of determinants of health and, you know, some of the goals of implementation science being, you know, the health literacy issues, especially we're unique in that we are Alabama and we are last in lots of things. But I think of the health literacy, the economic impact, the, you know, access. Many of the health determinants in implementation science sort of overlap to me, and I certainly could see it being separate, and I like the idea of being separate because that is certainly an area that I focus a lot on. However, I could also see it being intertwined into the others as well.
Charlene, this is David Hardy from College of Education.
Mhm.
I like the idea of this being a separate theme, primarily because there is specificity in the other 4 themes content-wise
Mhm.
that a lot of researchers on the campus may look at those and say, well, I don't do any of this, so ALRI is not really a place for me to look for collaboration or
Okay.
support. I think this opens up that door to that other group of people.
Okay.
And I was going to ask, you talked about technology. I know in previous conversations we've talked about telemedicine. How many technologists on campus, such as myself, are paired with people on the implementation side?
Yeah.
Right? This gives us an address to look for those collaborators.
Yeah, that's true. Okay. So you guys have convinced me to make it a separate theme. So if I get in trouble for having 5 themes, I blame the faculty. Anyone else have a comment?
Hi, this is Heather Gunn.
Hi.
Hi. I'm sorry I had to come in late, so I apologize if this is already covered, but also, here's another disclaimer. I'm not an implementation scientist per se, but the one thing that I think about in terms of our institute, and Ansley, this is a follow-up to what Ansley was saying, is that I see this theme as the way that we remain connected to the community as well. Like ensuring it's the thing that kind of holds us accountable to translating all the things that we are doing in themes 1 through 4 to the community. And as an example of that, it may not go with every strategy necessarily, because sometimes you're in the very origins of figuring something out. If we don't know anything about a certain disorder in a rural population, implementation science isn't there yet, right? But once we start learning, then I think it's our responsibility to make sure that we are helping the state of Alabama and beyond with what we're learning in Ames 1, or you know what I mean, strategies 1 through 4.
Yep. Nope, that's good. I'll incorporate that in the description of the theme. Okay. So I think we did discussion all the way through. So are there any other sort of comments about the strategic plan? Okay, so
Darlene, I have a question, and it's not specifically, well, I guess it's peripherally related to the strategic plan. So I was wondering, sometimes like people, or we do these like cluster hires and that are sort of thematic. And I was wondering like if there's any way that like you see sort of relevant to these themes that ALRI could be involved in that, or maybe could provide some funding for that, you know, because I mean, I don't know how much you've been looking at the chat, but like, one of the themes in the chat that's come up has been like, it would be helpful to have somebody who has like knowledge of doing sort of genomic research that could bridge the like social psychological aspect and then the more biological aspect. And like, maybe we could, you know, make a cluster around that somehow. It seems like a good candidate for a cluster hire. So I was just wondering if you could maybe speak about that, if that's a possibility.
So I'll definitely plan to support cluster hires along themes. Whether or not they listen to me is a whole other story, but that is definitely part of what I plan to do. Because again, you can, once you have your themes, then it's easy to see where the gaps are, right, within those themes. And so then working with different academic units to try to help sort of push hiring proposals is something that I hope to do and plan to do. Again, how much good it will do for me to support is sort of a whole other sort of story, but I definitely plan to do that. Yeah.
Hey, Charlene, it's Caitlin. So one of the things I've been trying to figure out is where development fits in this. And I was surprised not to see it as one of the major aims, considering how many affiliate centers deal with either early side of aging or the later side of aging and development. And so
Yeah.
as a developmental psychologist, I'm a little surprised and just curious if you could comment on
Well,
that.
I mean, for me, development is included in both the rural health and health disparities. I mean, there could be a developmental theme. Definitely, you know, early development in terms of infant morbidity, mortality around sort of neonates and that kind of thing. Because I talked about just the maternal and infant mortality group. But I think, so it could definitely be incorporated in the rural health part of it, because that's just about health, but it's also focused on kids in rural areas, but also in the neuroscience, because looking at neurodevelopmental disorders and focus, but there the focus is on the neuroscience of it and not sort of other aspects of it. So I see it incorporated in at least those two things, but even potentially the environmental health theme, if we're talking about environmental pollutants impacting development, right? So in that case, development is across the thing, and definitely implementation science, because that's a lot of what your center does. And a lot of the work in education is focused on at least, well, in this case, education, but development. And so I think it's woven throughout the themes.
Yeah, I think the reason why it feels like we're missing something, even I see how you can fit development into the themes, but I think we're missing that opportunity to talk about capturing Alabama life as it goes through development. So kind of back to the idea of the cohort study that we talked about last year. And I don't think that anything like a cohort study where we are going and truly understanding and capturing how any of these different factors within these different themes is kind of changing and evolving and related to later stage outcomes without the support of something like an ALRI, where we're bringing people together. There's core support. Because
yeah, but again, I mean, I really do see, like, I see the cohort study sitting in rural health, because that would just be one of the I guess, sub-themes of rural health that we would be focusing on is development, because that study was designed to be done in rural Alabama. So,
Charlene, to follow on with what Caitlin is saying, I think that, again, part of this is about perception and about people finding ways to attach themselves to the work of the institute. I would say that in the College of Education, my faculty members would not necessarily gravitate toward a rural health theme as being something related to which their work would be related in the same way that they might a theme that was around human development.
So if we change the health side of it, because it's really and rural something else like rural light. I mean, because I'm not sure if it, because if we go down this road, then we have a developmental theme, we have an aging theme, we have a maternal health theme, a cancer theme, and so that's where, you know, in some ways you kind of struggle. So you want an umbrella that can incorporate lots of these different areas, but there's some commonality. And so maybe health is the wrong word with the rural. And would more people see themselves if it wasn't rural health, but rural life or something?
What about rural development, rural human development, rural life, and I don't know, something. But I'm in 100% agreement with you that you can't have more than 5 themes, then it's just diffuse and the elevator speech is gone.
Well, and I think that it could be just a clarification about what is a theme versus what is already going to support. So like if there are kind of like off-site, you know, support systems, and that's like a core, you know, within that kind of could support any of the themes. I think maybe that's part of what I'm just missing is what the overall structure looks like. And I know we have to start somewhere, and I'm still kind of getting caught up on how everything works here, but
me too.
Yeah. So I think that so that could be something that evolves, but I would definitely I agree with David that like one of my goals would be to make sure that people are engaged, and if they don't necessarily see themselves or how they fit in, and maybe that's like just little anecdotes, here's an educational psychologist and what they're doing in this theme. And so I'm not quite sure. I don't have an answer for you, but I'm giving you my reaction.
Okay. No, that's helpful. I mean, it's helpful to hear these reactions, and that's why I wanted to have the town hall. So, because some of it's just about how we word the document so people see how they fit in a theme. But also, I think the titles of those themes matter. And so, if rural health sort of makes you think I don't fit, then we need to think about another title so that you see yourself in it, right? Because I sort of, in my mind, you fit right in that theme and the implementation science theme and the neuroscience theme. And so I think making sure that I word it so that at least everyone on this call can see themselves in a theme, I think is important.
And I didn't mean to sound like I wasn't, because I didn't fit, like one of these bubbles wasn't me. We're all on this call because we're very excited about the work. So just and for putting this all out there.
And that's right. It's very helpful to me to get these reactions again, because then it makes me know how I need to think about what I need to think about when I'm wording the document.
Sharlene, this is Edward Sesnov, and we have a lot of folks from the College of Engineering on this call. And my impression is very similar, because for engineers, we don't have like a technology theme. So the engineers would have to gravitate to one of these themes. But as far as I know, not everyone has a direct fit. So it would be nice to have a more general wording somewhere where people could easily attribute that here is the technology-driven whatever that is.
Okay.
So that at least we can have our engineering folks who do a huge variety of things to associate with at least with one of these themes, or maybe with two of those themes.
I mean, I maybe because I was trained as an engineer, I see engineering in all of the themes, but and the overarching sort of data science, AI sort of research core. So yeah, but I get your point. There's no technology driven where engineers naturally gravitate towards. And so anything else? If not, I just want to make one sort of announcement, kind of, or let you know something else that we're thinking about doing. So we want to continue with town halls, but sort of morph them into colloquia, right? So and likely working with the fellows to help identify people, and the center directors to help identify people to come and do talks, but also get our internal people to come and give talks. And so we want to try to do these somewhat regularly, but not too regularly that people sort of get burnt out. So I was thinking maybe once or twice a month having a colloquium where we can come together as an ALRI sort of family, and you can learn about what each other's doing, but again, bringing some outside people in around some of these themes is something else that we would want to do. So if this day and time works, given that we do have enough participation here, then I think we can probably set a time on a Friday morning. I think once you go too later on a Friday, people sort of disengage and start their weekend. So Friday morning may be better. And I think fewer people teach on Friday than the other days. So I'm hoping this time works for most of you, and we'll sort of start to do something like that. So again, thank you. And if you have anything else that you wanted to send, because I just got to the chat, and so if there's something else someone wants to talk about, or just send me an email. And And if I don't respond like within a few days, then email me again to bring it to the top of the list, because that just meant I forgot about you. So, but not intentionally, but just sort of do not hesitate in emailing me multiple times. But send me an email and I'm happy to chat. So thanks again. I'll send out the draft of the strategic plan to everyone, especially everyone on this call. And then so you can sort of see how it's written, and now we're not going to go back and forth forever, but but if there's something major that's glaring missing, then we can sort of adjust it before it's the final document. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.